thing that's 17% alcohol for like $10.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. And their stadium's only been open since 1994, so
Yeah, it's a newer one. It's really nice.
really surprised that they still they're still going to rebuild. And I saw kind of like somewhat of an aerial shot. So across the street is where the new one's coming up, and then like in the background of that, you can see Cowboy Stadium or whatever they call it these days. So
Jerry's
Wells.
playpen.
Yeah. So
it's one giant parking lot. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I know Seattle does that too. Both of their baseball and football stadiums right next to each other. So that might be a new trend now. How they're starting to build their sports complexes and whatnot. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, you got. It's not like the Bronx or Boston where you got limited space. You got nothing but space and time out there.
Yeah. And Atlanta just rebuilt, and who knows what Tampa will do. But
Tampa, they should just close up shop.
They should move, right? Yeah, go to Montreal.
The Trop sucks, man. They should go to Montreal. They should just go somewhere just silly. I don't even know where, but they should go.
I was surprised to learn that the Trop actually opened in I think 1987 or 1988. So. I thought it was new with the team, which would have been 97, 98, whatever.
I thought it was newer than that as well. They should just go to Nashville. They got a AAA team down there. Just put a pro team down there. They would love it down there in Nashville.
Yeah, that would be interesting. And I always wondered why Charlotte, never has a team. So
Charlotte would be a good one too.
Yeah, that's Atlanta Braves country right now, but I would figure they could draw well. And Puerto Rico sounded interesting to me, but I guess that's not as feasible as I thought. But the Twins and the Indians played there, and it was kind of a homecoming for Lindor. And but I just think it would be nice for the Caribbean market if it was ever feasible for them to have a team, whether it's there or in the Dominican or wherever. But
I feel like they should put a spring training team down there and just stick them down there for 2 months.
Oh, true.
That'd be a good selling point. I mean, you would get so many people to go to the games, and then you could, build it up off that. Probably, I assume, anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do I know?
It's an interesting thought, and I know Mexico City gets talked about too. So, yeah.
Oh, I'm sure you'll see an NFL team there sooner than later.
What about going to 32 teams? I'm not a big fan of that, but I guess the idea is getting kicked around
for
MLB.
Baseball, football, MLB.
Yeah.
I talked football for a second. I was like, all right, 32. But yeah, I like it just because there's so many players. I mean, what is it, 50 rounds in the draft, some year 46. There's so many players out there. If you look at like a team in the NHL, like the Vegas Golden Knights, they're a bunch of expansion hand-me-downs, and they're in the Western Conference Final and the Final Four. So the talent's there. It's just that some guys just don't get a chance to even break through. And I think if you look at some of the AAA rosters around and AA rosters, some of these big time. I mean, you saw it in New York, Chris. I mean, how many great AA and AAA guys you have just sitting there because of Judge, because of Sanchez, because of Stanton and stuff. I think you could build a good team.
Well, I see the problem I have with if you add 2 more teams, and I'm all for having cities to be able to have major league teams because not everybody can have it. But then you start going into, are you going to increase games now? Because now when you add teams, are more games going to be added? When you hear comments from Rizzo, for example, I think this was in mid-April, he was talking about saying he would give up some of the money in his paycheck so they could play in less games. So I think that's a big factor. And on top of that, I read an article actually about this same subject before the season started from John Morosi. And he talked about how if 2 teams were added, there would be a case where then there would be a straight DH, which means the National League would get rid of the pitcher hitting, and then we'd have a DH in both leagues. Preferably, in my opinion, I like having the pitcher hit because then it creates a little bit of a strategic, strategy when you go to a National League ballpark, or in the World Series when you have pitchers hitting, because then the American League managers don't have an advantage because obviously in their ballpark they have their donkeys who can DH and hit dingers left and right. But when they go to the National League, as you saw many times with the Red Sox when they got there, Big Papi wasn't playing first base. He was on the bench, and that played a major factor for the National League teams to at least try to get ahead before Big Papi was pinch hitting. So,
yeah, those are all interesting thoughts. And the thing, my initial thought was that so many teams have kind of opted not to compete this year, which was one of the problems in the off season. So if you put, two more teams in, does it dilute things a little more? And I get what you're saying, David, with the prospects and whatnot, how they're sitting there. And I think Blake Swihart's kind of been a victim of that. I think if he was given a fair shot, from the beginning, he would probably be a major league player. Whether
he made the switch from full-time catcher to just go out and play decent left field at Fenway Park, which is not an easy task.
Right. Yeah, and I really think he could have, been an adequate catcher, but I think John Farrell was so paranoid about losing his job early in the 2016 season that the plug just got pulled on him way too early, and then he did get some left field time, and then the injury happened. But if he was committed to as a catcher, he might have panned out. And Chris, you know something about defensive catchers.
And lack thereof.
Having Sanchez.
I won't lie to you, though. Sanchez has improved a lot since last year. I know he lost about 20 pounds. I don't know if it was muscle or fat or whatever it was, but he couldn't move last year. I felt like he was trying to, live up to the hype that he had in 2016 when he was hitting, I think it was 20 home runs in a month-and-a-half stretch. I mean, he was in the finals for the AL Rookie of the Year. So I think being able to go into this season, losing some of that weight, having more agility and being able to move vertically and go left to right to his glove side and to his arm side, I think has helped. But I've noticed from time to time he tends to get lazy and tries to attack the ball rather than twisting the glove and using his body and shifting. So, but he's still young. He's going to learn. But I'll be the first one to tell you that I worry about him behind the plate no matter what game, if it's a first game of the year or it's a World Series game.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, he'll eventually be a DH at some point, won't he?
Oh, yeah. Perfect example. You look at what the Giants did with Buster Posey. I mean, he's not catching every day for the last couple of years now because they're trying to preserve the bat. And I think with Sanchez, with him being so young and having a great arm, that at least buys him time to try to improve the catching. But if it continues where as he ages and his arm starts to, decrease, and like with anything, like with pitchers with their velocity, it's a lot of throws back and forth between the pitcher trying to, gun guys out and your legs wear down. So if you're Sanchez and you don't improve on that, and the Yankees, let's say they have another prospect coming up who can catch, it might be better defensively. Or they go out and get somebody. If Sanchez continues to not make the improvements, then he's going to shift to either first base with a guy like Greg Bird who can't stay healthy to save his life, or he can be in the DH spot. But then you run into the factor of, okay, what's going to happen with Stanton as he ages? I think that's quite the conundrum they could have in the next 4 to 5 years. But
you think Stanton can play first?
Oh, hell no. He's too stiff.
No?
He's way too stiff.
He is stiff. I didn't know. I mean, longevity-wise, it would make sense, but he is just a tower of muscle, that guy.
And, I mean, how realistically, you're not going to be able to keep everybody when they reach free agency. So I would imagine Judge would be a higher priority than Sanchez even.
Well, I mean, I know you answered the tweet I gave out last week about who would you sign, Sanchez or Judge. And I preferably went with, and this is only because of the position. I feel like with the market that you have right now, as recently as 2017, there was over 45% of guys hitting 20-plus home runs. It's much easier to find power than it is to find a catcher who can do multiple things, both at the plate and behind at the plate hitting and then behind the plate defensively. So I only picked Sanchez only because of what he can do with the glove and how he can call a game and whatnot. But you can't go wrong either way if you pick Judge or Sanchez for a long-term contract, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think I answered that tweet by saying
You did.
Before the season started, I would have picked Sanchez because he just seems like a sure thing, 2 years in a row coming into the season with, good, power numbers. But in hindsight, these first few months, I might lean towards Judge now because he's kind of backing it up, again. And
oh, he's played great.
One of your better hitters even. Yeah, I mean, he's still over 300, isn't he? Or no?
He is.
Yeah.
He is. He's at 3. I think last time I checked up until today's game, he was over 310.
Yeah, I was expecting, the stereotypical sophomore slump that you tend to see with these young players, but he's not having it. And
no, Benintendi is though. He's been struggling.
God. Yeah, he's finally coming around the past couple games, but he's been straight cheeks the first month and a half of the season.
Yeah, he's actually hitting 308 in the last week. Let me see what that translates to be in the last 30.
Yeah, he's coming along, which is good. He's finally turning on the ball. He was rolling everything over. Like I could do better out there as a lefty, just rolling it over. And now he's finally starting to turn and actually lift the ball a little bit. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's – I'm happy Cora stuck with him in the 2 spot, though. I know that Terry loves Mookie in the leadoff spot, so it really works out for pretending to be there.
Yeah, I'm fine with Benintendi in the 2 spot. Another thing that gets lost with him is his OBP is pretty high, and it's actually down to 345 right now on the year. And I thought he was leading the league in walks as of a few games ago, but so he's getting on base, but he has been scuffling at the plate, and only 2 home runs? Let me see.
Yeah, just 2.
Yeah,
it was just the unless he hit another one yesterday that I didn't see, but
yeah,
he had the one against a couple nights ago. He had it.
Yeah, I saw it. It was in
nice
the
hanging breaking ball. He
was
mashed.
That Tanaka maybe. I could
yes,
be wrong.
there you go.
Yeah,
Tanaka.
Yeah. So he'll come around, and I have no concerns with him. I am a little bit concerned with Devers a little bit. It seems to be scuffling. He's hitting 257. His OBP is down to 299, which is obviously very low, and his strikeout rate is extremely high. He's already up to 46. David, can you see him possibly getting option to Pawtucket maybe when Pedroia comes back to kind of refine some things?
I don't think he'll go back down to Pawtucket for that. I think first maybe he has to stop hanging out with Hanley so much. He just loves closing his eyes and swinging for the ball. Too young for that.
Right.
But, I mean, in all seriousness, I think that he'll get some days off. Especially, I don't think Nunez is going anywhere once Pedroia comes back. I think Nunez will be able to play. He's more comfortable at third and short, Nunez is. He plays better defense there. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the yips. I don't know if it's a physical thing. He can't open up his hips wide enough to throw it to first. But he's better on the left side of the field. So I think that you'll see Devers sitting more, kind of how JBJ just sat the last 3 days and they worked in Moreland, Hanley, and JD. I think they'll be able to work in Holt, Pedroia, and Bogarts and Nunez, and I think he'll just take some time off, work with the hitting coach, talk to Cora. I don't think they'll put him down Pawtucket because I think they do need him up here. And like you said, he is batting 250, 260, and batting 260 at third base, and he's got 7 home runs, I think, this year. It's not terrible.
No. And a lot of his damage does get done in high leverage situations. He's
not afraid of the moment, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. His RBIs are up there right now, so that's pretty good. He's on pace, I believe, to be right around 100. So that's encouraging. Actually, over 100. So yeah, hopefully we'll figure it out.
So where do you think Pedroia goes?
Well, he'll go right back to second base, I assume. I think he'll have a lot of off days, though, himself. He'll probably play like 2 out of every 3 games. But in the order, though, I mean, I hope they don't put him at the top of it or near the top. I think he should be down probably in the 6th through 8th spot. I mean, where do you see him falling?
I think he's going to go. So if Farrell was here, he'd be in the 2 slot and Benintendi be in the 6. But I think it's Cora, and like you said, I mean, I kind of